Yes, so today's is going to be a little bit of a hybrid, combining what we've held traditionally as an artificial intelligence training call. So really just to help understand better, as a topic, how this correlates to a lot of different classroom topics. It's not one that's just siloed, but it's part of all of the different classes that you are all teaching, and how that can be incorporated into your classroom and into the topics that you're teaching. And then we'll also have the classroom experience portion of the training. So really helping you as you are in the final stretches of preparing to be on site, of how to manage the classroom. So, you are all experts on the topics, and we just want to give you more support on how to manage being in the classroom, whether you have a really quiet class, whether you have a class that gets derailed and you're trying to rein them back in, or different activities you can do to engage, some that have worked, some that don't work. So bringing faculty that are experienced and can share their experiences with you. So I am going to kick it off. We're going to start with Zach, who is going to lead the AI training portion of the call, and then we'll hand it over to Sarah Birnbach, then Joseph Jones, Lisa Weitzel, and then I will open the floor to those that are on the call that would like to share anything, experiences you've had, best tips in preparing to teach on site. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Zach for the AI training of today's call.
Great, thank you, Cece. Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you all about how I've been incorporating AI and helped people incorporate AI into the different types of workshops and presentations that they've done. And so a lot of this is from personal experience, so which will hopefully provide some good and helpful insights, but might not be 100% exactly what your experience has been. And so if there's any other things to add as I go through it, that would be great. And then I'm leaving some time for questions, but we don't have to wait till the end. So if things come up, please, let's have the conversation while I'm talking about something, so that we're not moving on before we're all kind of on the same page about what the topic is. So so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a few things, and then I'm actually just going to share my screen and show you the types of workflows and things that we can put into our sessions that might be helpful, maybe spark some ideas, or might be a little bit different than maybe what you've done in the past. So first, which I'll always do anytime it's an AI presentation or not, or about anything, whether it's faculty or just stuff with Chambers, is an intro to AI. And I think it's important to define AI in a nice, clear, and simple way, not just for us, but for when we go and teach. I attended a lot of trainings myself and conferences, and I find the most challenging to be when people start getting very technical and start explaining things about AI that's not actually useful. Then we'll talk a little bit about the idea about how AI actually is meant to support expertise, not replace expertise. So, really hammering home that you are the subject matter experts, and that AI can be used as an amplification of your ability and your expertise. And of course, never a replacement, whether it's for your expertise or the people that we're teaching their expertise as well. It's not a replacement. And then quickly going over, because we don't have a ton of time, but limitations of AI use. But I would like to hone in on one of them, which is the privacy and security, because that is the question that I get asked the most when I'm doing a presentation or a training, and I'm sure it will be, if not already, one of the questions in your AI discussions that will be asked the most. And then I'm going to go through, I prepared 3 use cases that'll touch 3 different courses for Institute, at least actually throughout the curriculum. Just to, again, give you an example of the types of things that we have found helpful. And actually, I pulled these from, I did a workshop training presentation thing at the Virginia Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives, and these use cases are pulled from there. So you'll see some Virginia names there. And I know some people are in the area there anyway. So the way that we talk about artificial intelligence, I always find that it's very fun to kind of link it back to the 1950s when it was, invented. But that the term itself is not really a very descriptive or useful term. In fact, the people who named artificial intelligence AI, they didn't like the name. They thought it was a bad name, but they thought they would end up changing it at some point, and they never have. And yes, of course, AI is an umbrella term. So a lot of things are inside of it: large language model, natural language processing, big data, machine learning, algorithms, all this stuff. But quite frankly, I find that becomes very confusing if we try to talk about that. Really, what I try to do is boil AI down to its simple core, which is that it is a computer program designed to accomplish tasks the way a human being would, but without human intervention. So no matter what other part of AI you talk about, there's all being developed to get to that point, to be a computer program, which is accomplishing tasks, or at least meant to, the way a human would. Now there's all this other technical stuff around it. There's some other fun stories, but I think, in my opinion and my experience, if you stick to something as simple as that, if the conversation starts getting starts coming up and getting to that point, I think you'll do well. And the analogy that I think about is my iPhone. So I have 3 cameras on the back of my iPhone. I have no idea why there's 3 cameras on the back. I don't know what one does over the other. I don't know if they're all the same. I don't know if one provides like wide and one is like tall. I have no idea. But what was really useful for me to find out was how to use the camera. So the technology behind this camera and how it takes really good pictures is actually not very important to me in my day-to-day life. It would be interesting maybe for us to have a conversation about that if you know about it one time. But when I'm actually being trained on something, or I'm in a workshop, I'm really more interested in how I can use this camera, particularly how I can use it in my work. And that's how I always think about talking about AI. You don't really need to be a technical like wizard to be able to talk about AI, because it's just a computer program, and really the key is knowing how to use it. And then the last thing I think that's kind of important is we hear people use words like models and tools pretty interchangeably. But I actually think it's kind of important to know which one we're talking about. So, and some of you probably already know this, but there's a difference between an AI model and an AI tool. An AI model is essentially like a proprietary program that has been built on its own data and trained its own way. So ChatGPT is a proprietary model. Copilot is a proprietary model. Gemini, is one. Claude is one. Meta is one. Mistral, all those. All these other tools that you see out there, including Otter for note-taking, or things that are being built into things like Growth Zone or whatever, those are all tools that are built on these foundational models. And why that's important is because I highly prefer that when and sort of the people that I've been teaching is when we're going through use cases, we're using models, not tools. There's nothing that the tool can do that the model can't. Everything is built on those models. And so using a program like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or Copilot or whatever you're comfortable with is most helpful, even if you're going to do something that you can find in a tool, because 1, it's most capable and what most people have access to. 2, their free versions are very good. In fact, you don't even need an account to use ChatGPT, so people can just get up and running in the middle of your class. But 3, if you can use a model and the foundational principles inside of them, you can translate it into any tool. So those are basically the main things. Like when I'm thinking about like what is AI, that's kind of what I want to talk about and what I want to focus on. Anybody have any questions? I'm going to move on from that. But anybody have any questions on what is AI? Do you think that maybe you had a different experience about defining it in your class or anything like that, or just for your knowledge? Okay, pretty simple. Computer program. It's been around since the 50s, but now we can talk to it using our natural language. So now we can all use it. That's really the only thing. Okay, so now we've also heard a lot about the concern that people have using AI in their role, and I'm sure this will come up in your classes. I heard about someone used it and they got in trouble for this, and I heard about someone using it and they got in trouble for that. Or a lawyer used it and they got cited because it wasn't real case law. Or Canada Airlines used it and they got sued because the AI bot gave out the wrong policy. So basically, and honestly speaking, 99% of the problems people say are AI problems are human problems. They're actually people not checking the work. They're people not doing the prompting. They're people actually using AI outside of their area of expertise. There's many problems with AI and many challenges, but if we use it in our area of expertise, we will limit those because we'll know how to ask the right questions, and we'll know how to understand what a good output is and how do we switch it. Just like we would work with an intern or something like that to get where we want to get to. And the example that I give, and you're going to have to bear with me because it's about food and all I think about is food. I just finished lunch and I'm already thinking about dinner. In fact, I already know what I'm having for dinner. But it's an example of Bobby Flay. So I'm a pretty good cook. I cook at home when I'm home, like all the time, like at least 2 meals a day. But if you put me and Bobby Flay in
Not gonna lie, her name has already come to mind, period.
So if you put me and Bobby Flay in the same kitchen with the same tools and the same ingredients, then we would have completely different outcomes, because Bobby Flay is an expert in that field and I can dabble, right? He knows how to use the tools. He knows how to ask the right questions. He knows how to problem solve. He knows what a finished product looks like. And each one of you in the area of your expertise, you are that Bobby Flay using the tool of AI. That's how I think about it. And that's how I think, you should think about it. It's not, you don't need to know the ins and outs of the technology to understand how to use AI in a very meaningful way in the subjects that you're teaching, because you know those subjects that you're teaching. And that is both a empowering amplifier of your expertise, but also a cautionary tale to other people that if you start using AI in areas that you're not familiar, that is where the trouble can happen. So if you're not a lawyer and you're using AI to write law, you can get in trouble. You don't know what should be included or what shouldn't be. If you're not in HR and you're advising people on how to use AI in leadership, I mean, that's going to be a problem, because you don't know really what the real cues are and what the right questions are and what the good outputs are. So AI is an amplifier. So it'll amplify your expertise, but also it'll amplify our deficiencies as well. And that's both a good and a bad thing. Now, another thing that might come up is, again, AI's role in all of our work. And an example that I always give is, there's this picture, and I can show it to you in a little bit, of teachers protesting outside of a school. I think it was in the 70s when calculators were invented, saying that calculators are going to make all of us dumber in math. And by the way, I think they were right. We are all dumber in math. But it's a tool, and now we've gotten to a place in society where we're not really going to go and delete our calculator app on our phone because we rely on it. And I think it's another similar way to think about AI, is that it's going to help us with the long division, essentially, of the work that we're doing, but still require for us to know how to enter the formulas and judge whether or not it's a good output. So I'm going to go into the limitations before I walk into the workflows, example workflows, but any questions about any of that? Okay. Okay, so there's plenty of limitations and problems with AI, which I think are good to know. I'm sure many of you already do, but are worth calling out quickly. And you get around some of these limitations, one, by using it in your expertise, two, by understanding how to prompt and basic good technique, and just using it inside of your comfort zone. So it can lie, it can hallucinate, and there's good reasons for that. And if you know that, it'll be helpful. It doesn't understand real world context, although that's a little bit changing, but it still makes it problematic. People are not individuals. So we're all data sets, so it can confuse that. It has bias inside of it. And I think it's good to understand how that happens too, so you can maybe mitigate it, particularly those of you who are focusing on areas, on topics that include ethics and bias and things like that. So of course, the training data that goes into these models, there's biases in those, but then there's also human beings after that training set happens that are also called reinforcement learning, that are engaging and training these models by saying, that is good, that is bad, you should do this, you should do that. And human beings are biased. So there's like tons of ways that bias is getting constantly worked into these things. And so as you use them, even if you're prompting well and you're being aware of it, you may notice those biases. Hopefully you do. And again, if you're in your area of expertise, it'll be easier for you to notice when that stuff is popping up. And so I just think it's good to be aware of that. There's a possibility of model drift, which isn't that important. But I guess the last thing to talk about is privacy and security. So I'll mention that real quickly before I jump in. So there is a lot of fear around AI, and I think that makes sense. I'm totally scared of AI, I think for many healthy reasons, and I'm also excited about it. But I also think there's some things people are scared about that they don't need to be. They might as well focus their fear on the right areas. So there is this idea out there that AI, or at least the foundational models, right? ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, AI is training on our conversations, on our chats. That is not true. So it's not true, not just because they say it and it's in their terms and conditions. I'm not making a judgment just on that, but because of how these things work and get better. The training data that they have been built on is like their gold. That's their differentiator. And so if they were just allowing unvetted information from every user to go into its training data, it would seriously compromise the service and the product. Also, I've talked to a bunch of people at these companies, and they don't do that. It's just not good practice for building or for training their models. So it is true. So it's not true that AI is like if you put something into AI, it goes out into the open web. It doesn't. No, I can't search what you put into AI. I can't do that. There are risks still, though. AI models are in the cloud. So you are engaging or putting your information into the cloud. But if you're on Microsoft Teams, your stuff is in the cloud likely. If you're using Google Workspace, your stuff is in the cloud. You are increasing your surface area of risk in the cloud, but you're not necessarily creating a new door. So you do have to consider that. There are some risks about adding more information into a cloud that could be exposed. And by the way, they're always exposed at some point. And whether or not someone finds your stuff and cares about it is another story. So I think it's good if people start asking to point, especially if you're doing things like, have a workflow for like motivation to like help like game plan coaching or talking with somebody who's kind of like not performing as well as they used to, like what's happening when you're putting this information about this person in there. I think it's kind of good to know exactly where that goes. So I'm ready to jump into the workflows unless there is a question before I do so. And there's always a question on this part, so I'd be surprised if there's none. I'm scanning through the pages. No? Okay. You just want to see it. So this is a good point. So this goes into my last point. AI has been around long enough that everybody has attended some AI presentation before. And what they seek the most are practical examples that they can put their finger on and walk away with. And I know that's already happening at Institute, and that's awesome. So it might make sense to prepare one or two workflows that go into exactly the material that you've already presented, but just running it through AI. Because people are going to want to, if it's AI stuff, they're going to want to walk out with that prompt or with that workflow or with that idea or with that tangible example. The age of AI possibility is kind of behind us. The age of AI practicality and application is where we are today. So I'm going to just share my ChatGPT screen with you and go through a couple workflows to give you an idea of like, this is the type of stuff that I will typically present and that I would like recommend that maybe you might want to consider, just depending on obviously what your thing is. So particularly, it's good for these workflows to be like very simple. Doesn't mean they're not meaningful, but just very, very simple. So it's like it's things that to get people started, to get their momentum moving, and to get them a quick win. Because you want it to be simple, meaningful, and part of the work they're already doing. You want them to feel like they can do this, they can accomplish this, and ideally, by the time they walk out, they're like, "I've done it. I've already won. I can do it again, and I can do it in other areas." So the first one is about it's for C185 member retention. So basically, what I prepared is there's a membership renewal letter. And I'll show you what my prompt is. I'm actually going to share what the actual renewal letter is. So we're going to pretend I'm with the Charlottesville Chamber of Commerce. And I had AI just pretend to prepare or write a renewal letter, a pretty average renewal letter. So this is, I'm a member of multiple chambers, or we are, my company. And this is what we get, renew your Charlottesville Regional Chamber membership today. Thank you for being a valued member of the Charlottesville Regional Chamber of Commerce. Your support helps strengthen our business community, and we're grateful to have you as part of our network. As your membership renewal date approaches, we want to ensure you continue enjoying the many benefits of being a chamber member. We've seen something like this before. To renew your membership and maintain, please take a moment to renew here if you have any questions. Okay. So, when I present this one, the idea is usually like we're being inundated. And in the age of AI, the large majority of consumers are expecting organizations to directly communicate with them one-on-one. And 76% of people feel disappointed when that does not happen. So this is a way to like highly tailor a renewal letter or renewal campaign to increase member retention. So here is the prompt. You'll see in a second. So it says, let me just increase it. So it says, act as director of membership engagement at a regional chamber of commerce. So we're giving it a role to play. It's one of the good prompting techniques is role play. And generate a personalized membership renewal letter on behalf of the Charlottesville Chamber of Commerce for business. When you use all caps, you can use HTML tags, but you could also just use all caps. It acts as a placeholder. So if you save this, you can just keep it down here and only do one copy and paste over and over again. So on behalf of Charlottesville Chamber of Commerce for business, use the attached original template, which I'm actually going to attach. It's a good reminder. So I've just attached that here. But for context, but customize it to reflect the values, mission, and language found on the business's website. So again, I don't have to like restate who the business is because I have that placeholder at the end. Ensure the tone aligns with how they present themselves, whether formal, community-driven, innovative, or customer-focused. People, of course, like to see themselves presented in the communications that they get. Highlight specific ways their chamber membership supports their industry goals and community impact. Make the letter feel authentic and relevant to their business while keeping it professional and engaging. Actually, I'm going to add something here. Might seem a little harsh to the AI, but it's okay. I don't think it feels anything yet. But I'm going to say the person receiving this letter will bet their life that it was written for them and not any other person on the planet. Kind of a weird thing is like when you somehow put like the stakes of life into AI, it like performs better. It like has like more like, I don't know why, but it does. And then again, you see here business, and there's a placeholder. Now I'm just putting it's the UVA credit union. So this is something that's simple. Every chamber has to, send out these things. It's meaningful because they all want to improve their retention. And by the way, we've run this with chambers and associations. And when they do this, their retention goes up. They like report higher numbers of retention. So it's meaningful and it's a part of the work they're already doing. Okay, so dear Allison, so we found the person. That's great. Renew your Charlottesville member. Keep driving community impact with us. So that's part of their website. Thank you for being a steadfast partner of the Charlottesville. See, it didn't call it a member, it called it a partner, right? So the idea here is it's going in and it's like taking their language, reflecting their values and their beliefs into this. Thank you for being a steadfast partner of the Charlottesville Regional Chamber of Commerce as a member-driven, not-for-profit financial institution. UVA Community Credit Union exemplifies the spirit of what makes our local economy thrive. Purpose-driven service, people-first leadership, and deep commitment to community well-being. This and that. Through our educational programs and advocacy efforts, the Chamber helps amplify your mission to improve the financial health of the community. So it's being very, very specific. And there you go. So, and then what I'll do is I'll get like another like example of a business and say, now do it for that business, and another one, and another one, and another one. And then they're getting all these, highly personalized engagement things. So I'd imagine there's something about, membership renewal letters in the retention thing, or maybe there's not, but whatever is like already a part of that class, you can just have AI help run that for you in a more personalized or specialized way. Any questions about that one? I got two more, which I think I have 4 minutes and 37 seconds to get through. Okay. I'm either knocking it out of the park or not. Okay, so here's the next one. So the next one is a member analysis. So this one could be for the E244 using data. So this one's really awesome. This was actually like, this workflow was invented by an association we worked with. We didn't come up with this, they did. We just helped them refine it. So I'll start a new chat. And here it says attached are the membership list and engagement scorecard for the Lynchburg Regional Business Alliance. I've actually worked with them before, they're cool. Please analyze the membership data against the scorecard and categorize each member based on their engagement score. Identify members who are highly engaged, moderately engaged, and risk of dropping out. Return the results in a social report. Now, what's cool about this, I'll usually actually run this one in Claude, but I'm just going to do it in ChatGPT because I'm already there. So basically the idea here is, it kind of goes to member retention as well as using data, is, usually people can export some like large report about their members and like what they've done, what their membership level is, how long have they been a member, have they been like sponsored anything, what events have they gone to, different things like that. That gives you some sense of their engagement or lack thereof. And so what we did was we just created an example of a membership list. which is nothing too fancy. So I think I have like 100 members in here. Yeah, I know chambers have way more than that, but the idea here is like this is just supposed to exemplify, right? So that's the other thing too, is like when I go through workflows, I always want to like create some sort of documentation that would like resemble what they would be able to work with. Not something too fancy, but not something useful here. So this could look like a membership list that the Lynchburg Regional Business Alliance could have. The Central Virginia Bank, Lynchburg Digital Marketing, how long they've been a member, what their committee participation is, membership level, annual investment, staff attendance, so on and so forth. And then what I've also created is, for this, an engagement scorecard. So idea here is, and you can, and usually I would like show them how to take AI and like create this based on what they're actually able to export. Is like, okay, if you're for core membership, if you're you get 2 points for every year as a member, max 15 points. You get this many points for involvement. So it's a scorecard that the AI can like go through and look at the list and rank everybody. It used to be like even like months ago, you could not do this in one bulk. Now you can do this in one bulk. So I'm gonna attach the example membership list. I'm going to attach the engagement scorecard and hit go. I'm also actually, just because I can't help myself, I'm going to run it in Claude, because if you haven't seen what Claude can do with data, you will love it. Oh, here's my report already. Oh, no, that's the list I gave it. Okay. So it's still analyzing. And also Claude's analyzing. So I'll let that run for a second. It'll probably take like a minute or two. If it came back too quickly, that would be really suspect. And then the last one that I prepared is for the motivation. So it would be for the C230 managers who motivate. So it's just an idea here where there's somebody who is working, who's been great, but they have maybe not been performing as well. Okay, I think we have it here. Hold on.
And Zach, your screen stopped sharing about a minute ago. I don't know if that was intentional.
It was not intentional.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah, it was, and then just recently stopped.
Okay, so here is the engagement report. So it took that entire list that I gave it and my scorecard, and it just generated an entirely new list that I can now download. So this Blue Ridge Manufacturing, their level is highly engaged, low engaged, highly engaged, at risk, low engagement, low engagement. So now you can say, okay, here's all my like at risk of dropping off. Now I can focus my membership retention plans on them. I can also do with this is like look at my highly engaged members and say, what are the commonalities of them that I want to bring my lower engaged members up to reflect. And Claude takes a while. Claude loves the code. Claude, if it can, it's just going to start coding right in front of you. It's going to make you watch it type code. So it's still doing that. If we have time, I'll show you what it comes up with, because what it will come up with is like an interactive dashboard, which is like really cool. All right, and I'm going to run into the other one. So the prompt that I have, now this is kind of like, if you're, look, I don't know leadership, to be honest. I don't know this motivation stuff. So like, just bear with this prompt. You might be looking at this being like, I know leadership and this is not how we talk. And that's fine. I get it. That's why you're the expert and you're the best person to use AI for this. But Zach, is this a paid version of Claude? Like I'm pretty sure you could do what I'm doing in the free version. I haven't used a free version in a while, but I'm almost positive. The one that you're looking at in ChatGPT, it is the paid version, but you can do that in the free version as well. You're going to get the paid version is basically, there's some functionality that's limited, but it's mostly your usage that it'll limit. So you'll run something and if it's heavy, like what I'm doing now, it'll say, okay, you're done for like a day. And it'll put you in AI prison. Okay, so this is saying you are a leadership coach helping me prepare for a conversation with a team member named Jordan. Jordan has been with us for 3 years and is well liked by a team, but has been missing deadlines and showing signs of disengagement. I'm his direct supervisor and want to re-engage him without micromanaging. We have 20 minutes scheduled. Help me prepare. So I'm going to start by saying like draft a sample script. Draft a sample script I can use to start the conversation, including specific language that is constructive, motivational, and non-defensive. And of course, like if I am not a person who knows how to do this stuff, I will look at this and be like, I don't know if that's good. Like maybe this is a good approach, maybe it's not, maybe it's dangerous, maybe I'm going to set this person off. But you, as an expert, will know whether or not this is a good start and how to change it. Hey, Jordan, thanks for making time to meet today. I want to start by saying how much I appreciate the value you bring to the team. I've asked this conversation and I've noticed some shifts lately. That's a nice way to put it. To me, that seems good. I don't know. But now here's what I'm going to do. I want to like kind of test myself. So I'm going to have it play Jordan. Now play Jordan. How might he respond to this conversation opener if he were cooperative but guarded, defensive, or burnt out and honest? So here's what you might say. So this is kind of like game planning your conversation. I do this a lot actually and I think you need the paid version for what I'm about to say, in the ChatGPT voice mode here. So if you have the app in this like black background button here with the white lines up and down, that you get into voice mode. So if I'm actually on my way to a meeting, a sales meeting or whatever meeting, I can start talking to ChatGPT to help me prepare for this meeting and have that person have ChatGPT take on the role of that person so that I can prepare. So like one thing I could do here is actually go into this chat. So now on my phone, this chat that I just showed you about Jordan is here on my phone. So I'm going to use this. I'm on my way to meet Jordan. Tell me, ask me some questions he might ask me one-on-one and give me a chance to respond.
Absolutely. Let's run through a few questions Jordan might ask you, and you can practice your responses. Jordan, so are you unhappy with my performance overall, or is this just about the recent issues? Your response is not about being unhappy with your performance overall. You've done great.
And so on. So you can say, no, I want to answer, and you can rate it at the end and give me like, critique or instructions or whatever. So those are Claude's still going. Anyway, those are the workflows, the type of workflows that I like to bring into these kind of presentations. They're simple, they're meaningful, they're part of the work they're already doing, and they're easy. I can give them these prompts and they can go back to their offices and start doing this stuff immediately. So I went over. Sorry, but you must have known I would. So
no, thank you. And truly, as you are all preparing and thinking through, and I know I saw in the comments here or in the chat, interesting content, fascinating content for membership presentations. There's a lot of different ways that this, that you can integrate this into the different topics. And Zach is a wealth of knowledge. I hope I'm not overstepping when I say if you have questions, follow up with him. If this sparked a question of, hey, how could I apply this in the course I'm teaching? And again, it's not a matter of you need to become an expert in the next 2 weeks, but just the awareness of how you can use it, and introducing it as a concept. And Zach is definitely an amazing resource. I know we use you often, so thank you so much for sharing this and giving, starting that, but continuing to help support as you were all preparing. So thank you, Zach. Any questions for Zach before we move on to our next facilitator? Awesome. I know it's a lot. So definitely if you think of something after, super helpful. I agree. So thank you, Zach, for sharing that. And we're going to move on now kind of to the next segment, which is the classroom experience, helping with more hands-on. So we have our 3 facilitators, and then we will open it up to whoever else would like to share. So we're going to start with Sarah Birnbach, and then Joseph Jones and Lisa. So to start off, Sarah, I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Cece, and Zach, thank you. That was amazing. I taught Managers Who Motivate, so that was quite interesting to me. So Cece asked me to take 30 years of experience and wrap them into 15 minutes. So I'm not going to try and talk as fast as Zach did, but I am going to try and give you as much information as I can. First of all, one of the biggest challenges that I see, especially with first-time instructors, is too much material. The Institute participants like to be participants, and they like to ask questions. They like to chat among themselves. They like to share information with each other. And one of the things that leaves them feeling a little bit gypped is if you say, oh, I didn't have time to get to all my material. So even if that's true, don't advertise it. But be careful when you're planning your agendas to make sure that you leave enough time for group participation. That's the first thing. CC asked me to talk about managing the students and the situations that you have. So let me go to that next. One of the things that I want you to know is that no one has ever died of silence. So if your group isn't saying anything, you'll be standing there silent and it'll feel like an eternity. But for the participants, they are thinking. They're thinking about what you just said. They're thinking about how they can use it. So that silence is a time for them to utilize what you've said and internalize it. So don't be afraid to stand and be silent. Now, let's say you ask a question and you don't get any answers. One of the things that I like to say is, okay, who would like to go second? And that usually loosens everybody up. They chuckle and somebody will raise their hand. The other thing is, if you ask a question and nobody responds, you can look to people who have been participating and ask them, Zach, what do you think? Or Steve, how would you answer this question? Now, what if you have somebody who's a monopolizer? One of the things that I have seen faculty members do over and over again is continue to look at the monopolizer. Don't look at the monopolizer. Break eye contact. And if someone is going on and on, then what you can do when they take a breath, because everybody does, is say, you know, Joe, I'd really like to hear from some other members of your class or from the other members in this class. Let's give somebody else a chance. Who else has a comment about XYZ? For those of you who are teaching core courses, particularly, those students already know each other. They've got together the night before. If it's a second, third, or fourth year, they already know each other. So you don't have to do introductions. And I taught a number of electives, and I never used the class time for the people to introduce themselves to each other. I don't think it's necessary. Now, I want to talk about PowerPoint presentations, and please raise your hand in the format to let me know how many of you on this call are in fact using PowerPoint. Okay, I can't see all of your images, so can you just use the raise hand function at the top of the screen? Okay, well, I'm not getting any raised hands.
It looks like we have about 11, so the majority.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Then I do want to talk about PowerPoint because it's one of the misused tools, other than perhaps AI, that we have as presenters. If you are using PowerPoint, let me tell you the first rule of PowerPoint. And Mike, if you're using graphs or charts with Excel spreadsheets, this wouldn't apply to you. But if you have text, you want to have no more than 7 lines and no more than 7 words on a line. The other thing about PowerPoint is as soon as you put up a slide, that slide has news value. You are old news because you've already been standing there and talking. That slide has the news value. So everybody is going to start reading that slide or looking at the illustrations on your slide. If you start talking while people are reading your slide, you're competing against the slides, and the slide will always win. So you want to introduce your PowerPoint slide before you put it up. As Zach did, here's what I'm going to show you, or here's what you'll notice, or here's what you'll see. And then put it up and let them look at it. Give the group a minute to take in what you're showing them, and then start talking. The other thing that I've seen presenters do is read the slide or look at the slide instead of looking at the group. You know your slide because you've developed it, so you don't have to look at it. if you have to look at it to remind yourself what's on it, that's one thing. But if you're looking at that slide, your lips should be closed. Because if you're looking at the slide, you're not looking at your audience. And they are your first priority. Now, if you're going to be showing a list, make sure that you set the animations so that the whole list doesn't come up at once. Because you want to have one item at a time come up. Because if you show the whole slide, everybody's now read it. If you show one item at a time and then go and talk about it, for example, I'm trying to think of a slide that I used to use. If I was talking about delegation and some of the challenges of delegating, I would show one challenge first, talk about it, then have the PowerPoint slide show the next one, then talk about it, then the third one and talk about it. If you show all 7 at once, the group's already read ahead of you. So these are some of the most important or strategic things that you can do if you're using PowerPoint. I don't know. Do I still have more time, Cecily? I meant to set my timer and I didn't.
Yeah, you're good on time. You're good.
Okay. All right. Let me stop and see if there are any questions for me at this point. Are there any questions? Anybody in the chat? Okay. When I first joined the faculty, we gave out pre-work. I was on the faculty for 30 years, and by the time I was getting off of the faculty the last few years, I didn't see too many people giving pre-work. I don't know if that's something that's still being done, but if it is, give the participants enough time to do it, to read it, to look at it, and know that some of them will come to the class without having read it, without having done that. And you want to make sure you don't put anybody on the spot by saying, how many of you read what I sent out? Because you don't want to embarrass a class member in front of his or her classmates. You can assume not everybody will have read what you send out. Now, one of the things on CC's list is using movement as a presenter. I don't stand at the front of the room all the time. I move. Now, in the sites where I was teaching, there was always a center aisle, and I would go up and down the center aisle. It's particularly challenging when the room is stacked like a theater, so you want to make sure you're not tripping up the steps or wearing anything that might trip you, like cords or microphone cords. But when you move into the group, you become one of the group. And so it's not, I'm the facilitator and you're the group. We are one. I encourage people to move around the room. And remember, eye contact is important. If you are expecting somebody to respond, then look at them. Now, one of the things I hear people taught that I think is a mistake is that people are often taught to pan the room, look at the top of everybody's head. Well, that gives you too much visual stimulation. I don't believe in doing that. What I suggest is that you look at one participant at a time, then another, and then another. Not stare at them like this, but just look at one person for a minute. And as you're talking, then move your eye contact to someone else and then to someone else, instead of doing this number that I see people do all the time. When you give one person eye contact, you are, in essence, making a conversation between you and that individual that everybody else is getting to hear, but that person then feels part of your presentation in a more personal way. So I know there were 2 other facilitators who are going to share their comments. Before I turn this over to them, are there any other questions or comments for me? All right, then let me just say, it's been a privilege to be back with Institute and seeing so many familiar faces.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. And yes, I love the different comments and just the reminders, especially in using PowerPoint. It is something that, you can quickly lose the attention of the class, and just continuing to be part of the classroom as you're moving around. It definitely makes a difference. And thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. And
You're
with that, we'll turn it over to Joseph to share now.
Thanks, Cece. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Joseph Jones. I'm the Chief of Staff at Des Moines University and have had the privilege of teaching at Southeast for the last several years, and really enjoy it. Now, I am very thankful that Sarah went first because she covered all the things, really. So I get to just kind of plug in a few things, and then hopefully by the end, we'll leave more time for general questions here. But so many things that Sarah said are things that I totally agree with, and have a few caveats to add as well. A reminder, obviously, we're dealing with adult learners, and adult learners are different than K-12 learners. And I know all of you are lifelong learners, so you get this, but their class is going to decide for themselves what's important for them to take in and learn, right? That's what all of us do when we sit in the classroom, like, oh yeah, that's an important point to write down, and I'm going to ignore that thing. So keep in mind that they are pulling the things that they think are going to be most useful. As a class, as individuals, they're going to need to also validate the information that they're getting based on their own beliefs and their own experiences. So you'll see them kind of calculating and thinking, and the questions they ask will be based on that sort of thing, putting it in context to what they already know. Some of them are going to have some fixed viewpoints about some things, especially if they do the type of work that's associated with what you're teaching. And also adult learners look to find immediate usefulness to the information they're getting. They want to make sure that, okay, I'm here for a reason, I can use this thing now. And also really important to know that the room of people is also knowledgeable, and they have experiences to share with you and with their classmates. So give them the opportunity to share some of that meaningful information they have that could flow as a part of this. Now, I know Steve gets this, but I teach a core class that people either really already know well and feel like they don't need, or they absolutely don't want to be there because they think it's the most boring subject ever. Now, by the end, they're like, oh yeah, I get why advocacy is important. I understand this thing, but so trying to pull them in and giving that opportunity for them to engage hits on a lot of things that Sarah talked about for the talkative people and for the quiet people, and making sure you're giving that wait time to give people time to think and ask questions. Now, there have been times when I want to make sure that I know the class might be a little all over the place, so we might write a set of agreements of, what are we going to agree on as a class that we're going to, how we're going to treat each other, how we're going to, take time to speak and acknowledge each other. Also important for us to level set. So I begin with talking about why what they're doing in this particular class is going to be important, why that content matters for their practice, for their career. Oftentimes, especially because it's advocacy and government relations, I say this might not be your thing, but one day you might be in charge of the organization, and advocacy will definitely be a part of your responsibility somewhere along the chain. So it's good to understand, where this fits in, or how it might work, or what your tools are that you have. I do have a pre-survey that I will do every now and then to ask questions about issues that are important to their chamber or their association, because that's useful in some of the exercises we do in class. And so I like to know that ahead of time. And so there's a list of 4 or 5 questions that I try to send out about 3 weeks ahead of time, so I have enough time to get that information back. And on the back end, just to reconnect with the class with any materials that they've asked for, things that come up in discussion. I'll say, okay, well, I'll make sure I'll send you a link to that, sending that to everyone, and then also leaving that open for them to have discussion again with me if they want to go down the rabbit hole on something. I ask a lot for input as I go through, so it's conversational with the class. If they get off topic or they start to go too far down a rabbit hole, I will create a list, like a parking lot, and just say, okay, well, if we have time later, we can come back to this, but I'm gonna write it here so we don't forget. We'll collectively come back and discuss it so you can get through your material. Sarah's absolutely right about my first year. I just had way too much material. I did not understand how much conversation there would be. So prepare as if you want to, give them all the tools they need. And I definitely keep a whole bunch of hidden slides or other things that I might use supplementally later, but try to pare down to the things you need to essentially give them during the conversation. I also try to make sure I do group and individual work during my time period. So it might just be a quick discussion amongst the people at your table, or create this thing. Some of those activities are self-reflection. Some of them are project-based. Some of them are writing. They have a few different types of things, and also try to vary my PowerPoint as well. Besides the limited text, I try to make sure I have a video or two in there. I have some audio in there. I have some charts and graphs. So, knowing that people learn in different ways, I try to give those opportunities for people to learn different ways as well. And last, I just want to make sure that I try to connect to their lived experience. I don't always do introductions, but I definitely ask them, when the electives, what they hope to get out of the class, or what type of advocacy work their organization does, just to get the conversations flowing, and making sure that they know that they can network with each other about these things as well, and use each other as a resource going forward. So that's my tidbit, CC. Any questions?
Can I piggyback on something that you said, Joseph, that's really important?
Please.
There are different kinds of learners, and it is important to recognize that. There are auditory learners who will learn very well just by hearing what you say. There are visual learners, which is why I always used PowerPoint, because there are some learners who learn well just by looking and reading. And then there are kinesthetic learners who learn well by doing. So you might see some people typing on their computer, taking notes, which is a little different than if they're typing on their computer, responding to emails. And because people learn differently, you will have some people who will not say a word. And it doesn't mean that they're not integrating what you're saying, or they're not listening. It's just some people don't speak up in class, and it's okay. So try to keep in mind what Joseph is saying, that you'll have all different kinds of learners in that one room all at the same time.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for that, Sarah.
If I could, I want to also second something you said about about variety in your PowerPoint. I will often use visuals that have no words and would seemingly have no connection until after you explain them. And those are things that sometimes get remembered more than anything else. It's like that crazy picture of that, and then they relate it in their own minds, and it does break it up on the text. And also, if you're using video, which I encourage and I use, make sure you run a tech check beforehand. There is nothing that kills a class vibe more than, and we got this video and it's nothing, or it doesn't have sound. Run it, rerun it, make sure it's there. When it's there and when your tech is working, it's a wonderful tool. When it's not, it is the biggest buzzkill in the world.
Absolutely. And I will say, to your point, one of the things that gets the most remembered is that one of the classes I do have them watch I'm Just a Bill, and there's this nostalgia that hits their face all over again from childhood to sing that song and watch that video. Nathan, do you have a question?
To Steve's point, I will be by to help you run that tech check.
Oh, Cecilia had something in the chat. Let's see. I always have 3 presentations ready: the one where tech works, the one where it doesn't, and the one created by the participants. Well,
Absolutely. I can confirm, do the tech check. We will be there. I know sometimes people will bring a kind of a small mic, or not mic, a small kind of speaker, a Bluetooth speaker. If you know that you do it often, some people have several videos. Again, you shouldn't have to do that, but if you do, that's something I've seen and is a really smart move to do. Oftentimes too, some of the classrooms the students and attendees will have a speaker just playing music in the room. So always, come early, set up, test it. That's a great advice. And Mike, we have a comment.
Yeah, even though we've learned a lot here, but sometimes some of the simplest tools are the best. And classes that I've done over and over and over, and I'm probably doing over 100 classes each year, have a little, that nobody else can see, have a little timeline out there. Just generally, even though no two classes go the same, just generally know you're teaching either 2 or 3 hours worth of time. And, even at the institutes, oftentimes we're doing the same class repeating, none will go the same, but just generally know. Otherwise, I always find myself guessing a little bit. And these classes are very interactive, which is good. But you need to, out of the corner of your eye, just say, what's the quarter point? What's the halfway point? Just generally, and then you can adapt, because it's really not picking up. It's knowing that when I get to another section, how I could present it is the way I do it. So I finish up.
Absolutely. And if you have the break, have your break time set. If not, that you will lose them. Once the minute the break is supposed to start, they will be gone. They will not be paying attention. So if you have a break in there, if you're in a core class, have that time ready and factor it accordingly of, it's worth it to pause here, because otherwise we're going to start something that we can't finish before the break and I will lose them completely. And Cecilia, I see a hand.
Mute. Hi, I just want to say I work with a lot of boards, and all of these techniques work. Everything I've heard today, I have used them myself, and I just want to say it's all good stuff. So it's good to hear it again. I also have my own education program that I lead. So again, all this stuff works. Minimal stuff on the slides, lots of interaction, let the audience bring what they already know. And I always like to speak to the intelligence of the participants. I don't speak as if they don't know something. I speak as if they do, because if they don't and they want to ask a question, they will. So I don't assume that people don't know the content necessarily. Of course, nobody knows everything about any topic, but speaking to them as the adult experienced professionals they are, I feel really creates a great learning environment.
Love that. Thank you. Any other questions or comments before we hand it off to our final facilitator? All right. With that said, I will hand it over. Thank you, Joseph, for sharing, and thank you for those who also shared your thoughts. And we're going to hand it over to Lisa.
Hi, everybody. Again, I'm Lisa Weitzel with the Illinois Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives. There's nothing that I believe I can say that either hasn't been said or all of you haven't experienced or aren't already good at. I'm just going to share a couple things from my own experience. I end up teaching an elective at the end of Monday oftentimes, and it's hard to keep the attention of attendees. So interactive group, something to get them started and get them talking is pretty valuable. I do usually email all the attendees ahead of time and ask, in my case, it's governance, so asking for some samples about whatever the topic is that day, just to get some information and kind of establish a little bit of, hi, this is who I am, and this is who you are. And I also try to do a follow-up email with them as well. You could probably tell right now I have a quiet voice. And that's a challenge when you're speaking to a classroom without a microphone. So not only is walking around important, but it's especially important when you have a quiet voice, because I can't be, 20 feet away from everybody. There's a room at Midwest that holds, 100 students. And when I'm in that room, I have to be the school teacher who asks them to move forward, which is kind of embarrassing, but, I can't traverse that room, easily and converse. Probably because of what I teach, I do get monopolizers who have questions about situations happening in their own organizations. And I have to be very conscious about redirecting, asking them to stop by after class and ensuring that they don't monopolize the conversation. I don't think I really have much else to add. I'm looking at I'm looking at Sarah and Bill, and because those being my first instructors when I started Institute way back when, and I'm thinking there's nothing I can say that they're going to be able to do a million times better than me, but I am happy to answer any questions.
Lisa, the comment that you made is really important, because sometimes you will get a monopolizer or somebody who wants to ask you about their specific situation and they become very long-winded about it. And if you see everybody else's eyes glazing over, not only can they stop after class, but I've often said, why don't we join each other at lunch? So that they know they have a longer time period to discuss it, or after all the late afternoon classes are over. Because yes, you're absolutely right. You don't want one person to be monopolizing their particular story to the boredom of everybody else.
Absolutely. And it looks like Amy said something very similar. I love inviting a conversation monopolizer
Yeah.
to chat with me after class. It works so well to get the move on, and there's always a break after class. Love that.
To your quiet talking point, I have never been accused of being a quiet talker, but I would still encourage everyone, if humanly possible, to use a mic, because it's not about you, it's about your listener. And I can be a loud talker, but there can be bad hearers. And it annoys me to no end when a presenter goes, well, I have a big voice. I don't need a mic. And there's some poor sap in the back of the room who's got hearing problems. Oh, and your big voice doesn't miraculously cure their ears. So whenever humanly possible, use the mic as a courtesy to your listeners, not as a commentary on the strength of your voice.
Yes, in fact, I've
Yeah.
been doing a little research on, is there a portable microphone option that I can have with me, for example, at Institute when there's not a microphone option available with the technology. I haven't figured it out, so if anybody has any solutions, if you'd let me know, I'd appreciate it. That's reasonably priced.
And I will say from the staff standpoint, this is feedback we've received quite often. So we do verify when we receive the rooms that will be in at site. If it does have a microphone option, we always opt in for that. So we are always doing, if the room has the capability, assuming that yes, our faculty would like to have the option. Sometimes it is a matter of if the room has the capability, but if there ever is a capability, we do opt in for that because we recognize that, especially when you're teaching several classes a day, that's something that is a high frequency feedback that we get is, mics, they needed a mic, we need a mic. So if it has the capability, you will have one as an option. So utilize that.
So are those lavalier mics? Cece?
Yes. So again, depending on the room functionality, if it does have a lavalier mic, we do opt in for that. Some rooms only have a handheld, but if it does have the functionality for a lav, we do request that from the university.
And
But
then
again,
if it's
some classrooms based on size don't, or the AV technology don't have that. And so then it would be a handheld or podium mic.
we talked about
Sarah
moving
said-
around, so I'm sorry. We talked about moving
Sarah-
around, so podium mic limits the ability to move around. And the challenge with a lavalier mic is it usually has a long cord, and so you have to be careful you're not tripping over your own cord if you have a lavalier mic. The other challenge with a lavalier mic that I've seen is if it's on your left lapel and you're talking this way, then the mic isn't picking up your voice. So you have to make sure you have it on where it can pick up your voice no matter which way your head is turning. I'm sorry if I cut someone else off.
Sarah, I was going to add to something you said earlier, and that is the idea of speaking to one person lets everyone think that what you're saying is important. If you're yelling, so your point was make eye contact and don't scan the room. It's the same thing with the voice. You want to sound like you're talking to one person, not talking to the whole room, because nobody has to listen to the whole room. But if you're talking to one person, it changes the way you sound. It makes you sound personable and intimate, and like it's a one-on-one thing that must be important, and everybody wants to listen. So if I can get a microphone, I've spoken to 1,000 people with no microphone. I can do it. I actually have that odd little skill. But if I have a microphone and I have 15 people in the room, give me the microphone, because it can change the way I talk in a way that they hear the nuances in our voice. And today, nuance is what separates us from chat, AI.
Love that. And Nathan.
I will say, as a technology standpoint for the speaking, each of the rooms, and I know this is a thing at Madison more so than the other two sites, but they're technologically capable. PowerPoint has a built-in subtitling software, so the microphone will be better, can hear, the microphone is better to use, and also it helps the subtitling software hear it better. We've actually had some complaints about the subtitling software. We are going to use it if necessary on site. So that will be part of it for those hard of hearing in the classroom.
Excellent. I love to see it. Any other thoughts? So this is the open kind of open forum. We're going to now, if anybody has those that are returning faculty, if there's something that, I know we've been kind of sharing as we're going, but if anything comes to mind that you'd like to share, we ask you to pop in. And thank you, Lisa, for closing the loop with our facilitators today. So now we'll open it if any of our returning faculty would like to share kind of your best tips, practices, or if anybody has any questions. This is a great place and a great time to ask that. Who said it today? I can sit in silence. Feels like forever now. Well, if no questions, we would like to thank you for joining us today. Cecilia, yes.
Sorry, I always have questions. I don't often have answers. But what about using humor? Nobody's mentioned humor in the 2 training sessions I've been to. I know we're trying to engage people and have fun. Can we use humor? Can we joke around? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Participants like that.
Yeah.
I'm not usually a funny person. I mean, humor comes hard to me, but I do try to use it as much as I can. If you're doing a really a subject like governance, which is intense, or finance, which is really intense, then humor really helps to let the group relax. And they get to ease their brain for a minute, because if the participants are paying really close attention to details, then they want that humor to when they laugh, they get a chance to go, oh, okay, my brain can rest for a minute. So I definitely recommend the use of humor. For me personally, it's hard, but when I've had humor, I've won over a class. I had a class in their first year, and I do mock interviews, and they asked an interview question, and I gave a funny answer. And it endeared me to that class to the point that they requested me every year of their 4 years.
Oh, nice. That's good to know.
Just the one humorous response I gave to a prospective interview question. So it can really work for you.
Good, because I like to keep things light, because I think it does, like you said, Sarah, it does help people relax and really feel like they can engage and be themselves, be comfortable.
So I will share. I begin at the beginning of my communications class. I say, raise your hand if you enjoy listening to people you don't like. And I'm doing things with that. I'm making them all raise their hand, which I'm making them physically engaged. Then I surprise them, and they all take their hand down quickly, and they laugh. And so in answer to your question, getting them physically involved and emotionally involved early in the session allows them to be freer to speak. But if they sit there quietly as you lecture for the first 10 or 15 minutes, it's kind of hard to get them to open their mouths. But as soon as you start getting them moving and emotionally engaged, you have a much better shot at having a good class.
Great. Good tip. Thank you.
I love it. Any other questions?
And let me just go back on humor too. Sometimes when you use humor to talk about screw ups you've made in the content area you're teaching, to Bill's point, it not only humanizes yourself, you as the instructor, but it makes them realize it's okay to fail and it's okay to make mistakes. And we have, all of us, at least I will speak for myself, not for everyone, have a host of wonderful examples of where I've failed in embarrassingly horrible ways. And that can really be a good tool to let folks know that it's safe to fail. You try and try and try.
Love that. Excellent. Any other questions, comments? This is great, and I hope helpful as you're in the final stretches of preparing for site. For those that are joining us from Midwest, it is less than 2 weeks out, so we will be seeing you very soon. And then Southeast and Northeast are not too far down the line. So if no further questions, thank you all for joining today. And we will have the recording of this available after on the faculty resource page. So thank you all, and thank you to our facilitators for sharing, and have a great rest of the day, everyone.
All
Thank
of you
you.
Midwesters are welcome to look me up when we're in town.